But we begin tonight with some breaking news about the Bush administration's self-titled enhanced interrogation techniques, which are increasingly widely known as torture. Tonight, thanks to an ACLU lawsuit, we have obtained less redacted CIA transcripts released from the tribunals at Guantanamo. These are the parts of the transcripts in which prisoners explained how they had been treated since being in U.S. custody. In addition to revealing some new details of what was done to the prisoners, this newly revealed testimony refutes one of the Bush administration's still used justifications for their torture program.
KSM was questioned by the CIA using these procedures. And he soon provided information that helped to stop another planned attack on the United States.
The information we've collected from the detainees, from the people like Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of 9/11, has probably been some of the most valuable intelligence we've had in the last 5 years.
The claim from the Bush administration has been that by torturing Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, they got actionable intelligence that saved American lives. Well, in these new, less redacted transcripts, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed describes a very different scenario. During his 2007 hearing at Guantanamo, in very broken English, he says, quote, "I make up stories. Just location. Osama bin Laden, where is he? I don't know. Then he tortured me. Then I said, yes, he's in this area." In other words, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed says he lied when he was tortured. I make up stories. He says he's giving up bad information. He gave up wrong information while being tortured. And that puts a much different torque on the folks, prominently members of the Cheney family, who are still using the supposed utility of what we learned by torturing Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in their public defense of the torture program.
We didn't know about al-Qaeda's plans, but Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and a few others did know. And with many thousands of innocent lives potentially in the balance, we did not think it made sense to let the terrorists answer questions in their own good time, if they answered them at all.
If he were waterboarded, you would be able to get that information and prevent the attack. You wouldn't do it? You would let him go ahead and launch the attack?
How would I know that?
Eugene, that's exactly the situation these folks were in.
Exactly the situation these folks were in. So they waterboarded the guy so he would give them totally false information to make the waterboarding stop. Wouldn't that be a great idea if there were a ticking time bomb somewhere where you had a lot of time pressure to get the right information? Don't you wish we were still doing that to get wrong information out through people's fingernails obtained with pliers? You can't win on facts, and now the facts are somewhat more clear. Bush administration officials used to use the waterboarding of Abu Zubaydah and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to defend torture. Then last month, FBI interrogator Ali Soufan testified in Washington that he got valuable information from Abu Zubaydah using conventional, legal, proven interrogation methods until somebody else began to torture Abu Zubaydah, who then clammed up. So they can no longer brag about torturing Abu Zubaydah. Now it appears they can no longer brag about torturing Khalid Sheikh Mohammed either. That not only was it illegal, but it was also ill-advised, self-destructive, counterproductive. And so it may be that the last of these pseudo-substantive defenses of torture has tonight gone away. Joining us now is Ben Weisner, lawyer for the ACLU's National Security Project, whose lawsuit forced the release of this testimony today. Ben, thanks very much for joining us.
Glad to be back, Rachel. Thank you.
In previously released versions of these transcripts, and I mean, they are still pretty redacted. I mean, there's still big blocks of text on them, right? But in the previous versions, the CIA had removed almost all references to the abuse of prisoners. Today, it's still heavily redacted, but we are getting these new little blocks of text. What do you think are the most significant new details that are jumping out of these for you?
Well, I think that passage that you highlighted is very critical. And the first question we have to ask is, why in the world was that classified?
Yeah.
Was there anything in the passage that you read that included a secret source or method by the CIA, that included intelligence information that couldn't be shared with the world? There was one thing in that passage that the Bush administration desperately did not want the world to know, and that was that its illegal torture program not only was immoral, but that it was also useless. You heard Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He said, "They tortured me," and I said, "Okay, bin Laden is there." Well, have we caught bin Laden?
Yeah.
Obviously, this program wasn't working, but it was a critical linchpin of their defense of the program that without it, American lives would be lost.
And, as you point out, this brings us from not only the crime of torture to the crime of covering up the crime of torture.
Well, I think that's right, and I think different things are being covered up here. So the Bush administration critically wanted to cover up how ineffective torture was. They also wanted to cover up information about the specific detainees. There's a passage in which Abu Zubaydah, who Bush had called an arch-terrorist, the number 3 in al-Qaeda, recounts that eventually his CIA interrogators told him, "We realize you're not the number 3, that you're not even a planner or a fighter, that we made a mistake in your identity," and that's something that, again, contains no legitimately secret information, but just would have been very embarrassing for the Bush administration in carrying on this torture program.
What does this new information mean in terms of, I guess, in terms of accountability? I don't even know what that would mean anymore, given how little we've gotten from the new administration about what they'd be willing to move forward with. Do you think this has implications?
Well, again, and here I think the implications aren't necessarily the right ones, because we talked about the new information that was released, but I want to show you what was withheld. This was the document as we got it from the Bush administration.
Can we hold that? Can we get a shot of that?
I can,
anywhere?
Yes.
There we go, yeah.
And this is the very same document as we got it from the Obama administration. You see this little line here, it makes you want to say, keep the change, right?
Right.
And I think that what's going on here is very, very clear. This is information, the release of which would increase calls for criminal accountability. And that is something that the Obama administration has been fighting to avoid. And remember, these are voices that are missing from the debate. We have the Justice Department memos that tell you what John Yoo and Jay Bybee authorized. We have Dick Cheney's denials. But the people who were eyewitnesses to this are the victims themselves. And those people are still cordoned off and secreted away. And their words, which would give us a clearer picture of exactly what happened, this document is called Written Statement Regarding Alleged Abuse from Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. And it's still completely blank because they might give lie to another myth in this story. Remember that when President Obama released the Department of Justice memoranda, he said, interrogators who were following in good faith legal advice should not be held accountable. Well, what if they weren't?
Yeah.
What if the detainees are the ones who have the evidence that the interrogators went far beyond what was authorized, even in those horrific OLC memos that were released some months ago? So, I think that the disturbing trend here, and we saw it last week as well, is that the Obama administration is now stepping back from transparency because they see that it's an inevitable ingredient to accountability.
Ben Weisner is a lawyer for the ACLU's National Security Project, whose lawsuit forced the release of this testimony today. You're also still representing the CIA rendition flight state secret case as well, which proceeds as well, in which I feel like half of my homework for the show is studying what you do during the week. So thanks for giving me a lot of work to do, Ben. Thanks.
Glad to be here, Rachel. Thanks for your interest.